Hi, I'm Galen Carroll, the police chief for the Modesto Police Department, and I'm here today to ask for your help. Domestic violence is a huge issue in our community. The police department needs your help in impacting the domestic violence problem we have in our city. Right now, aggravated assaults are driving our Part 1 crimes, which makes Modesto look like it's a much more violent city than it is. Aggravated assaults make up about 72% of Part 1 crimes in the city of Modesto. 52% of those are domestic violence related. I'm asking for your help on how we can work together to make an impact on domestic violence in the city of Modesto. Thank you for your help, and I look forward to working with you.
Great. Is this on? Great. I'm really lucky to be able to introduce our guest today. So it's really a privilege for me to introduce Cindy. She is the Executive Director of the Center for Human Services, and I didn't know this, a licensed marriage and family therapist. She graduated with a BA from Indiana University of Pennsylvania and has a master's in counseling psychology from CSU Stanislaus. Married, husband, Pete, for 30 years and 2 children. And one of the things that I so much appreciate about Cindy, I've got to know her probably in the last 3 or 4 years in particular, is one of the things is this tremendous respect that you have in the community. It's phenomenal. I mean, when I really am looking for a key person to hire, rather than interview them, a lot of times I'll try to figure out a way to spend time with their family, especially their kids, because their kids will always pretty much tell me what their parents are really like or what the person is. Don't let anybody know that, because I don't know if that's HR good or not. But with Cindy, one of the things that I've learned is she has individuals that have worked for her and that are working for her that just absolutely esteem her, and that just speaks volumes. So would you please welcome Cindy Duenas. They love you, by the way.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. Well, good morning, everyone. Let's see if I can get my technology together. It's really great to be here this morning to talk to you about something that we all have in common, and that's family. Whether by birth or by choice, for better, for worse, like marriage, we all have people in our lives that we call family. People that influenced us, that laid foundations, that built things into our lives, that have made us who we are today, right? And so today I want to talk to you about some protective factors that we've learned throughout the years and with research, that when these things are present in the life of a family, there's reduced risk of bad things happening. Things like Galen talked about, like domestic violence, addiction, child abuse, things that we know greatly harm children and the adults in those homes. And so I wanted to set a little context for you, because I'm going to introduce the idea of protective factors by telling you a little bit about my family and myself, because that's what Marvin said I had to do, so I figured I might as well weave it into the presentation. And at the same time, I want to invite you, like you did in the beginning conversation you had at your table, to reflect on your own family of origin, your family that you grew up with, and how that influenced who you became as a parent, a grandparent, and who you are today. And so this is one of my favorite pictures growing up. It's a picture of my dad and my cousins and I at the pond on my grandparents' farm, where we spent a lot of time in the summer and on weekends just having fun and hanging out with as a child. And I didn't realize back then how it was just part of my upbringing, but how lucky I was to be able to be a child who could just play and not have to worry about some of the things that children in our community have to worry about today. So this is my family. That's my mom and my dad and my sister, myself, and my younger brother, Johnny. I do have one more brother, and Deanna's here, and she knows him. He didn't make the picture, but he's still part of the family. And I picked this picture because I wanted to show you how incredibly cool I was as a child. I was supporting a mullet way before they became popular in the 80s, all right? Why do our parents cut our hair like that? I don't understand. But these two individuals really were my frame of reference for parenting. They taught me through my upbringing what's right and wrong. They instilled values in me and beliefs. They introduced me to my faith. They disciplined me. They taught me about how to express my emotions, how not to express my emotions. And underpinning all of that is they provided me with a safe place to live and begin to explore who I was as a young person. And they didn't do that in isolation. I had a large extended family on both sides. I had grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins, and experiences with those people that laid another layer of identity for me, of who I am, not just with those people I lived with in my home, but another layer of people who loved me and cared about me and created a sense of self in my life. And also like you, I grew up in a community. We don't grow up in bubbles, we grow up in communities. And my community was a small coal mining town in western Pennsylvania, very similar to this. It was surrounded on all sides by rolling hills of beautiful trees. And I think that's why autumn is always my favorite time of year, because that's what I got to look at when I came out every morning. And in this small town of 1,500 people, we had one street light. Everybody kind of knew everybody, which was good and bad. It was bad if you were in trouble, because that meant that 2 or 3 people had called your mother before you got home. I was probably about 9 or 10 before I realized my mom wasn't psychic, because I couldn't figure out how she always knew what was happening before we got home. This was my street, and I'd like to say that the people who lived in those houses helped to raise me. It was Mrs. Petro, who I could go down and sit on her porch, and she would stop what she was doing and ask me about my day and let me play with her puppies. Or it was my church that I went to, where Sunday school teachers and youth group leaders spoke truth into my life that kind of laid the foundation for who I am as a child of God today. And it was a place where we had front porches, where you would sit and neighbors would sit, and they knew what was happening with each other in their lives, and they responded accordingly if something was happening in lives. It was a place where my mom was constantly baking pies because someone died, or there was a wedding going on, or someone was sick and she was making soup. It was that kind of community. You had to be home when the street lights came on, or you were in big trouble. So, without knowing it, I was filling this toolbox full of experiences and skills that were built into my life through these experiences I had at home. And I packed all that up, and I decided to move to California, where I met my husband, Pete, and we fell in love. You know that story. We got married, and we decided to raise a family of our own. And so we have 2 children, Peter and Carly. And Pete brought a toolbox into our relationship, too. And fortunately, his toolbox was pretty full of tools also. He had a pretty positive experience growing up. He brought his family traditions, his parenting knowledge, our rights and wrongs and our values, and together we got our tools out and we decided how we were going to negotiate that and create a family, a Duenas family, which is what we did. And along the way, we had our 2 children. This is a slide that shows my daughter as a baby and my daughter and myself now. And what is not present in this slide is everything that happened in between that my husband and I built into our children's lives. It was the rules we set up. It was the routines we had. It was the activities we engaged in. And in addition to the things that we built in them, the values, the beliefs, the how to express your anger appropriately, my strong-willed daughter, you can't do that. Go to timeout. You need to apologize to your brother. It was all of those things that we built into them that were building tools into their toolboxes. And at the same time, we had this layer of community that we wrapped around them too. We had a church family. We had friends. We had extended family. We had friends of their parents of their friends that became our extended family of support in raising our children. So we didn't raise our kids in isolation. We raised them with a village. And so now they're grown, and my son is going to be 27. My daughter just turned 24, and they're young adults. And so it's our hope, my husband and I, that they have at least a foundation of tools in their toolbox that they're going to take into whatever relationship they decide to have. And someday when they have a marriage or a family, that maybe they and their spouse will together negotiate pulling out the tools they have in both of their toolboxes. So I share this with you as a foundation for the fact that as I start talking about these protective factors, hopefully you'll hear how some of them were in my life and I didn't even realize that they were there. And I don't want to make it seem like everything was apple pie and happy, and we had our struggles. We had things that went wrong in our families too, just like there were some in yours too. But it does emphasize the importance of having these protective factors in your life as insulators for risk in your lives. So I want to start with this quote. Families are successful when key protective factors are robust in their lives and communities. So it doesn't just say that you just need to have them in your life. You need to have them in your community. You need to have, if you can't get what you need in your own nuclear family, hopefully there's enough support in your community to help you raise healthy and thriving children. So what is a protective factor? A protective factor is simply a condition that when it's present reduces the likelihood of something bad happening in your family. So as I talked before, some of the bad things that we know have devastating effects on families, like Galen said, are domestic violence, substance use or abuse, child abuse. When these protective factors are present, research has shown that there's a reduced likelihood of these bad things occurring in that family unit, and that child development is optimal in those situations. So I don't want to bore you with a lot of research, but just understand that there are hundreds and hundreds of studies that have been done on families, and what the researchers have found is these are the 5 protective factors. When these things are present in a family's life, the outcomes in that family are much better. And they're concrete support in times of need, knowledge of child development and parenting, social and emotional wellness of children, parental resilience, and social connections. So we're going to dive into these a little bit deeper. So, concrete support in times of need. What does that really mean? Well, at its basic definition, it means that families have stable places to live, they have housing, they have food on a regular basis, and they have clothing for their children and their family. That they're not concerned every day about what's going to happen next. And that if they do hit a crisis or something's happening in their life, they know exactly where to go to get help and support that they need. So as I described my family, I never worried about where I was going to live. I wore hand-me-downs until I was old enough to get a job and buy my own clothes, because unfortunately I had a lot of older cousins that were females, and so I never got anything new. But I always had what I needed. I never had to worry about that, so that I could go and play and have fun. But for too many of our families in Stanislaus County, housing stability is a constant challenge. Food insecurity is a true reality. In the majority of our elementary schools in Stanislaus County, high percentages of families are eligible for free and reduced lunch. Some schools are almost 100%. Schools are feeding our children breakfast and lunch on a regular basis. That's just an indication of the level of need that we have in our community. And that if a child is coming to school, we see this all the time at the center because we provide a lot of intervention services. If kids are coming to school and they're worried about where they're going to live when they get home, or they're living in a car, or they're hungry, how do they focus on math and reading and science and all the things they need to learn? It makes the job of the teacher almost impossible. And it's not even reasonable to expect that child to thrive in a school setting when they're hungry. And that's the reality in our community. So concrete support in times of need is the baseline protective factor that families need to be healthy and thrive. The second one I want to talk about is social connections. You heard me mention the network of people in my life, whether it was my neighbors or my Sunday school teacher or my extended family. Families can't operate in a bubble. They need extended systems of support to really thrive and support their families. And so for me, it's my friends, it was my mother-in-law and my mom that I could call if I had a question, didn't know what was going on or how to handle something. But for a lot of our families that live in neighborhoods where maybe they don't feel as safe as they would like to, they're not necessarily connected to their neighbors. And in our society, frankly, even in neighborhoods that have more wealth, neighbors are not sitting on their front porches anymore and talking to each other. So we have isolated ourselves in society. And so this is, I can't emphasize enough how important it is for families to have social connections in order to thrive. Knowledge of child development and parenting. Okay, So this picture was taken June 22nd, 1992. And on June 23rd, 1992, they sent us home, and they didn't give me any kind of manual with that. I had to figure that out on my own. Fortunately, I had role models and examples in my toolbox of things that I remembered that I got from my family that laid the foundation for how my husband and I parented our children. But if you grow up in a home where there's domestic violence and or substance use, your parents may not be giving you the things that you need, the tools that you need to understand what you need to do with a newborn, let alone a child that's growing all through those years. You've missed some important data. You don't have those tools. So how do we as a community develop those kind of tools for the parents who just did not get that when they were growing up? Social and emotional competence of children. So these are two happy pictures of my kids. That's Carly when she was cute at a moment in time, and that's Peter. But I can, as you all know, kids have a wide range of emotions, and they go all the way up to those teenage years where you're like, oh my gosh, why did I have kids? What was I thinking? So it's our job as parents to teach them to understand their emotions and to regulate them, right? So that they're not going in and blowing up at their boss the first time the boss says something they don't like. And that has to start at a very young age, and you teach children through their experiences, timeouts, or it's okay to be sad, or you're scared, I'm going to comfort you, so that children walk away with that competence in their lives that they take into their adulthood and into their own family lives. Now, if you live in situations where you didn't get that because your parents didn't give it to you and their parents didn't give it to them, that cycle continues. And so how do we as a community help parents to develop the ability to teach their children about their emotions? And the last protective factor is called parental resilience. And that's really literally the ability to bounce back from life's challenges. And I love this picture of my son because he's about ready to get slapped down by my 6'4" brother-in-law in the driveway. And I can tell you that he played for another 15 to 20 minutes, never giving up that he was going to make that basket. And to me, that represents the kind of resilience we need as parents, that you can't quit. You know, they don't take them back when you take them to the hospital. You know, you can't stop. You don't get a day off. And that you have to be able to continue to parent through challenges and struggles. And so what do you have in your toolkit that helps you to be resilient and be able to bounce back in times of trouble? And I talked to you a little bit about what that looked like in my family. It was Mrs. Roach who came up and stayed with my brother and sister and I so that my parents could take my brother to New York for eye surgery, and we could continue to go to school and be in our home and feel safe at a time when it was a scary time for my family. So there's lots of ways that parents need those social connections or other ways to build their parental resilience. So, what's in your toolbox? Did you grow up in a situation where you had lots of tools, or did you pick up some tools along the way or borrow one from your spouse that you didn't have from your experience growing up? Do you know people, or do you have some tools that are missing in your toolbox? And before you start your own family, you might want to build some tools into your life or strengthen some tools that you don't have. And do you know people in your community or your sphere of influence who have empty toolboxes? So what do we as a community do about this? The fact that we have so many families who need tools and need the help and support that they're not going to probably get from inside their own story. So I want to suggest to you that there are that the protective factors isn't a program. You don't have to go to school to learn the protective factors, right? They're small everyday things choices we can make in our lives to impact the life of another. And so I want to share a couple of those that from my own experience. This little boy goes to my church. He was recently adopted, and during the year that his family was fostering him, I decided to get fingerprinted and TB tested so that I could babysit because they needed I asked them, how could I help? And they said, well, we don't have anybody to babysit and they have to get fingerprinted to do this. And so I said, okay, I'll do that. And so on Sunday afternoons, my husband and I spend time with this little one. And what it does is it creates 2 or 3 hours of time on a Sunday afternoon where those young parents can get some parental resilience and take care of themselves, spend some couple time. And at the same time, you know, Pete and I know how to do this, right? We raised 2 kids. You saw a slide of a kid that was similar to this size. And I don't, you know, it's not hard for me to go back and spend a couple hours of time with this young one. what a difference it's made in his life. He has another person in that extended family that is connected to him. His speech, his motor skills are developing. It's such a joy in my life. I mean, it's not even fair that I get such a blessing out of doing something that's helping someone else. I want to share a way that a church in the community is doing this with a school. So Centenary Church has partnered with Standiford Elementary School to just come alongside them and see how they can strengthen their families. So it started with a meeting with the principal, how can we help? And the principal said, well, we need help with reading and improving test scores. So we have volunteers reading in classrooms, and test scores are going up at Standiford. But the other thing that we decided to do is have a monthly parent cafe at the school where they host a dinner, and they have small table conversations with parents around the protective factors. So you have parents building social connections with other parents at the school, learning about how other people are parenting, so they're organically learning from each other in a way that's building their tools in their toolbox. How can you be an influencer in your place of work? The families that you have influence over are your employee families. So are there simple ways you as an employer could support your families and how they're raising their children? So at the center we have this lending library that we set up for families to be able to check out books so they can read to their kids over the summer, or if you're a single parent and your budget's tight, you have resources that you don't have to spend money on to do that. Sorry. We also recognize new moms and give them a goodie bag so that we emphasize the importance of parenting. And we also provide concrete support in times of need. Our managers know if somebody's struggling, if you hear something and it's a one-time thing, like they have to drive to Oakland to see a specialist and gas is a problem, we'll buy a gas card. We'll do things that we know might help that family stay stable in times of need. There are a lot of other ways that this is alive in the community. I know Marvin's been talking to you about focus on prevention. It's pivoting away from homelessness because there's a strong foundation for homelessness work to continue, and moving into the area of strengthening families. So you'll be hearing a lot more about ways you can get engaged in strengthening families if you're interested. If you want to learn more about parent cafes, I have cards on the back table. Feel free to pick one up and you can inquire about how you or a group of people who might be interested could attend a parent cafe or learn more about that as a way to strengthen families. There's a cradle to career movement in the community where we're looking at ways to support families in raising their children from cradle all the way up to a career in the education field. And I know you're aware of the Love Our Neighbors website that was just developed that's going to have a lot of opportunities for you to be able to connect with people. And so in closing, the light just went off. Boy, did I do good, Mike, or what? Is that good? Okay. In closing, I want to leave you with a quote that I heard at a retreat once. It was a retreat that the topic was hope. And the speaker shared this quote, and it really stuck with me and felt appropriate for today. And it was, sometimes people can't get fixed in their own story. They need a bigger story wrapped around them. So I'm just challenging you and encouraging you to get involved in this story, the bigger story that we need to create in our community for our most vulnerable families. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy.
Hey guys, let's give Cindy another hand. I thought that was just phenomenal. I'm serious. I'm serious. I mean, one of the things that I walked away with definitely, and especially, I'm not going to point at what table I was at, but I was at a certain table, and how broken we all are, and how many of us don't have a whole lot of tools in our toolbox. And just, I think the conviction I walked away from is for us to live in authenticity and to live at a place where we don't always act like we have it together, right? And in that authenticity and in the pain that we've all gone through in the different segments of our life, that when we find those opportunities where we're able to have community and really begin to express ourselves, we can be real. And I think that when we're able to connect in those areas of our lack of sufficiency or the pain that we've gone through as a result of growing up in maybe not the best circumstances, we can be attractional and also be a healing agent. And also, in our own selves, begin to grow and identify that we're not alone. And so, my challenge for me and for all of us is to, I think, be intentional about that on a daily basis and look for opportunities where we can find other individuals that we could say, hey, I'm not going to be the teacher and you're going to be the student, but we're going to share together, where we are and the pain that we've had and how we've grown from the pain and how supportive we can be with one another. Because if I didn't have individuals that came alongside of me in the community, because I was raised by a single mom who had been physically abused throughout her life, and I was just dumped into the public school system, speaking Spanish for the only Spanish speaker in my class, and then having to grow up in the school system, and they ended up becoming kind of my support system, for good or for bad. But throughout my life, I've been fortunate that God has placed different individuals in my life, kind of in very similar places as myself, that have been able to come alongside, and we've been able to mentor each other and kind of figure it out, not ever completely, and with God's providence, have been able to survive, and in some instances thrive. And so my challenge to all of us is that we live in confession and we live in honesty as we move forward. So anyway, that's kind of, thank you again, Cindy. It was really great. This is the time where I usually give Marvin a really bad time, because that's like what I like to do. It's one of my best things in life that's favorite to me. Marvin's not here, so I can't do that. I can't call him Marlon. I can't, go off on him on all kinds of things about how great athlete he thinks he is and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to say something, so you guys, this is between us. Marlon really is a really pretty good guy, okay? Don't let anybody know, but he's pretty amazing, okay? Got that? Okay, Marvin, if you're listening to this, I don't know what I just said. I just kind of got emotional by mistake. So one of the things that we really want to have you guys concentrate on or take advantage of is schedule a time with somebody that's here. Be brave and be intentional enough to find somebody that say, hey, let's go grab some coffee. Really want to get to know a little bit more about you, and do it in a way where we're really trying to, again, really encourage one another to grow, right? To grow in strength and to grow in numbers. And also, I think it's really important, and I know it is for me, that whenever I hear something that's really kind of touching, that really kind of resonates with me, like this did, that I share it with somebody. That I find a time and I look for an opportunity where I say, hey, you know what? I was at this meeting the other day, and I heard this amazing quote. Well, I heard something that just really kind of impacted me. And being willing to be honest, in that. And what that does is I think it allows relationships to begin to be nurtured and for us to grow together. So, can you guys do that? You guys brave enough to do that? I'm going to do it. So, do it with me, all right? And then, so what I want to do is, you want to take a look at a Catalyst program flyer that's on your tables. I want to highlight a couple of things. I want us to, again, remember GLS is coming up, and we have rented the Doubletree. Was it the Doubletree? Is that what it's still called? I think so. So we're expecting about 400 to 500 people there. So another opportunity as we gather together again to grow in intimacy and relationship. And then also I want to introduce Todd Balsinger, and he's having workshops today. So Todd, are you around? I think you're around here. Let's give Todd a hand.
Good morning. I've spent the better part of the last 10 years going around the country quoting my favorite definition of leadership. It goes like this: leadership is disappointing your own people at a rate they can absorb. And what it points to is the fact that that a critical difference between leadership and management. Management is really important. Management is taking care of the things entrusted to us and turning them over to the people who will then take care of them. And when you do so, they cheer you and thank you. Leadership is taking people where they need to go and want to go, and they tell you they want you to take them, and then they get mad at you for doing your job. Because leadership is about having to deal with people's own resistance. And so what I'll be talking about in my workshop both this morning and this evening is the way in which we can lead change in a ever-changing world, and about how we overcome the resistance of our own people who ask us to lead them, so that we might be able to lead them into the kinds of initiatives that we talked about today, kinds of things that we need for our churches, and so that we might have the opportunity to become better, more vibrant communities. And so if you'd like to come join me, I'd love to have you be with us, and we'll have a good conversation about leadership in a changing world.
Thank you, Todd. Let's give him a hand. I really encourage you to go. Phenomenal book that he's written, and really excited. I have a ticket to give away. Somebody need a ticket? Somebody need to go? I'm going to give it away right now. You got it. Thank you. Okay, thanks for that. Let's see, at the back table here, I know we've got different community events that we're going to want to highlight. One of them in particular is Cindy Marks. Why don't you stand up, Cindy? I always love to see Cindy. We're celebrating our 7th annual prayer breakfast coming up Thursday, June the 13th at the Doubletree between 7 and 8:30. Blessing the city with prayer. And I would strongly, and I think all of us at CMN strongly recommend that we all attend that, because that's where it begins, right? So please, if you have questions, Cindy. What is it? Thursday? Okay. Okay. I don't know what Cindy said, but you guys listened better than I did. So whatever she said, listen to her. Don't listen to me about that. Okay? It's on the flyer. So please go back and take a look at that. Sign up back there. Hey, what about the cookies today? You guys get some cookies? Let's thank the Girl Scouts. What's that? There's extras. I don't know if the Girl Scouts think that a lot of us are very thin. And so I guess that's their observation. They think that we need to gain some weight. So not for me. So let me pray, and then let's release this. Father, I really thank you, Lord, for Cindy and her message today. And I pray that it finds its way into our hearts, God, and it just sprouts. And that we would be at a place where we would be convicted in a way that would lead us to loving our neighbors and loving our children and loving each other, and finding just tangible ways to just absolutely show the love to this community that you have so gracefully given us to live in. We love you. We love the work that you're doing in Modesto and Stanislaus County, and we just pray for your strength and guidance and strategy as we move forward. In Jesus' name, amen. Everybody, have a great day.